Hey, so Corey, let's talk about the funny factor. Let's talk about humor because we don't all have the same funny bone in marriage. And when it comes to first responders, it comes to military personnel, there's sometimes a difference, sometimes almost a gallows humor, sometimes a dark humor that maybe the spouse doesn't share. Talk to us a little bit about that.
This is such a great question. And first off, I just want to say every couple is different. Sometimes you have a couple that has the same exact sense of humor, and that's what originally attracted them together in the first place. But when it comes to military and first responders, you're right. There is a lot more dark humor, and that's because military and first responders are around a lot of dark things, and they have a job that walks them into very dark places. And so, to cope with that, you find the community will bring humor into it. It's a coping mechanism. It's a way to break the ice. It's a way of kind of making things a little less serious because the job is just so serious at times. And also during deployments or shifts that are just really long and boring and nothing is happening, it's a way of there's a culture that happens. There's a battle buddy mentality where dark humor starts to come into play, and it's this thing that you share with a battle buddy, inside jokes that happen far away from the spouse and the kids, and suddenly you find yourself at a barbecue or during reintegration when you're around other military families, and there's not only these inside jokes, but they can tend to be dark, they can tend to be crude at times. And I hear from a lot of couples a lot, what do I do with the fact that there's a lot of foul language? And that doesn't feel right. Now, we've got our kids around and you've been gone for 6 months and now you're coming home and talking differently too. And so, first of all, I just want to say it's okay for you to have a different sense of humor than your spouse. My husband has incredible wit. He makes me laugh. I sometimes say that I married him so that he could make me laugh for the rest of my life. And it works out great for him because he's got somebody that laughs at his jokes. And there's no competition because there's no way I'm ever going to tell as funny of a joke as he can. And I've embraced that. So I think it's okay for couples to have a different style of sense of humor or one to have a stronger sense of humor than the other. But when it comes to having dark humor, I think it's good and healthy for a couple to set boundaries if that humor is too dark, if it's too gruesome, if there's foul language that makes you uncomfortable, or especially if it's around kids. Healthy couples have healthy boundaries, and that takes very delicate conversation and communication. When you can have the help of a professional walk you through that, that's definitely helpful. But it's also important to kind of learn that language of each other. Instead of just kind of saying that's other, that's different, I don't want to understand it, I don't want to get to know it, and I don't want to participate in it. It's okay to not participate in it, but sometimes it gives you insight into what your spouse has experienced, insight into how your spouse is coping with what they see day in and day out. And so learning this language is a way to give that nod and honor what your spouse is going through. So while it's okay for you to not share in that humor, I would definitely encourage you to have conversation and get to know what's behind that humor. And if really necessary, it's also okay to, in kindness, set healthy boundaries if it's not particularly humor that you appreciate or something that makes you really uncomfortable. Boundaries are especially important in a healthy relationship.
That is so helpful, Corey. And I think, just as a psychologist, I remember in my clinical training, I had three other colleagues at the same stage. We're all, budding clinicians, and we would drive. This was in Los Angeles. We'd drive to the county hospital where we all were doing these fellowships and working with, psychotic patients and really, gruesome, dark stuff and sometimes violent stuff. And the most therapeutic thing for us was the drive home. It was about a 45-minute drive back up the 405 freeway. And I just remember we would laugh about things that other people would just think, oh my goodness, that's so insensitive or whatever. It's a coping mechanism, right? It helps you cope. And that's really what I hear you saying is on the military front, first responder front, because the work is so dark, you've got to have that outlet with people that understand and you can bond through humor.
Yes, and can I also say, you brought up a great point that the spouses also have their own unique kind of humor as well. There are so many things that we as spouses go through during a deployment or during long trainings or just trying to do this lifestyle that are inside jokes or have a sense of humor in a way that the service member may not fully relate to either. And so really this is not just about that service member and dark humor. It's really how do we communicate when we have a sense of humor that's different from our spouse, and enjoy and appreciate that, understand it, but also set boundaries if you have to. But in general, just get to know each other on that level.
Such a good word. Corie, thanks as always.